So my topic is the second priority theme, so it's on social intelligence and e-participation. So it's slightly orthogonal, but sort of connected to the first one. So in the first part, I'll try to motivate actually what were our insights, intuitions, and how we developed then the recommended plan, which I will present on the pretty much last two slides. So let's start with, well, traditional slide on Gartner hype cycle. So probably everybody knows, and where language-related topics lie. So this is the hype cycle from 2011, the last one, and you see that in this upper part, there are 4 topics which are language-related, and they're all in the area of, let's say, 5 to 10 years to the market, according to the Gartner. So let's believe Gartner in that case, which would actually implicate that the topics which are running at the moment within a project somehow are pretty relevant. But let's now dig into some of those. Okay, last year probably not many of you spotted this relatively historical moment. So this graph shows the amount of time people in US spent on traditional web versus social web. So social web meaning Facebook, Twitter, and related. Traditional web is just usual portals and web pages. So somewhere in the June, exactly a year ago, somehow the average time which people spent on social web surpassed the traditional web. So this is very important trigger and signal for pretty much everything what we do, because this has implications on technology, on incentives, and many other things, advertising, businesses. Next thing, it's very important, so content consumption, habits change, are changing rapidly. So this is one graph which shows for the last couple of years how the total newspaper print and online revenue is dropping versus, let's say, Google's revenue going up. So basically the message we should take here is that the value is actually shifting from creators to aggregators. So this is, again, important signal which we need to build into, especially when you think about this e-participation part and people's consumption habits. Here I have just one slide to substantiate this. So this is part of some research from 2 years ago. So this is interdependency. Each node here in this graph is either a newspaper or an important blog. So this is just minor part of the much larger graph. So, and this graph shows how the information flows from early bloggers to newspapers to late bloggers and so on. So I just wanted to point out these interdependencies in this information diffusion which we need to be aware of. If we are not aware of this, then this means that we look at information in a very isolated way, in non-dynamic way. So information is extremely dynamic. We need to take this into account. Next, let's say, view is how media evolved through last almost 100 years. Yeah? So here you see adoption curves for radio, television. So on the left side you see radio, then you see television, then it's internet here, and so this is the mobile web. So mobile web is the next big thing. Yeah? So on the previous slides I was trying to emphasize the social aspect of information. Here on this couple of slides I will show the mobile aspect. So mobile web is going up. So although maybe not all of you are using mobile web, but generally global population is doing this, way more than maybe Europeans. So this curve certainly won't stop here. So these shady lines are recessions, and probably the new one is not even in there. Okay. One more point on the mobile web. So consumption, so here it's comparison of 3 services like Facebook, Twitter, and Pandora. So the amount of traffic which are generated by mobile devices is going extremely high. So you see 60–50%, which makes actually good incentive to reason about how to approach this from, let's say, user interface and so on, from this side. things. Then big data was mentioned a couple of times today. Yeah? So let's see how big data is really big. Yeah? So I went to Google Trends yesterday. I compared terms like big data, data mining as, let's say, business intelligence, traditional technology, then semantic web, machine learning, and language technology. So on the upper side, you see the data mining. This mouse, okay. Data mining is obviously a well-established field and big industry and so on. On the bottom, of course, we have more like researchy topics which are a little bit less interesting for the general population, like language technologies and semantic web. So here, this curve going up, you see this is a big data. So like 2 years ago, big data didn't exist practically in terms of the traffic or interest of the population. So this graph shows the amount of queries on Google on big data. So now, in the last year, pretty much came from the popularity of language technologies, almost reached data mining. So this is the actual hype. And below here you see the amount of the volume of news mentioning big data in the last months, and so there was this one Obama speech which actually made quite some hype as well. Okay, since we talk about big data, let's check who has the data. So this again, this is not intention to go deep into the numbers, but still. So there are industry sectors, and for each industry sector we have average amount of data which they have. Usually it would be from a few hundred terabytes up to, very frequently up to petabytes, so 1,000 terabytes. So this is just a signal that there's a lot of data to be checked. Now, what kind of data? So again, here we have industry sectors, and here data is kind of split according to the data modalities, data types. Video, image, audio, and text. Here you see that text is there. So there's a lot of things to do in this big data and text area. Again, all these graphs we could discuss them way more in detailed way, but somehow it's we don't have time. Okay, now we touched social aspect of data, mobile, big data. Let's check a couple of other diversities which we need to take into account. So language diversity in Europe, so probably some of you saw this graph from some time ago. So it's Europe, and each color represents a language. You see, I mean, as you know, this is just nice visualization how languages are diverse in Europe. The same graph exists also for the rest of the world. Yeah? So this is language diversity. Then something which is we kind of know, but it's hard to measure, is cultural diversity. This is also something which we need to take into account. So this is New York area. Each color represents, based on the census data, one racial or cultural group. Yeah? See how colorful the whole area is. So again, when we deal with these textual streams, social streams, eParticipation, all this needs to be taken into account. And there are some novel ways of data acquisition. So a week ago I was in New York, and so there was a truck, WikiLeaks mobile information collection unit. So this is for some future projects. Eh?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, yeah. Okay, just which out of all these signals, and there are many more signals which I could present, but let's say in these few minutes this was possible. So there are five recommendations which we came up with. So this is the table with a little bit more detailed description, but let's go into these 5 topics. So first one is modeling social influence and incentives. Since we have this social media, so social media is driven by something. Often we don't know actually through what. But so some of this recent research shows that it's possible first to model, to understand, and also to trigger influence. So this area is something which is going up, and this is certainly something which is worth investing. This includes also modeling diversity of information, diversity of different kind, which appears in information. Everybody talks nowadays about sentiment detection, opinion mining, and so on. But actually, this is still stayed on very primitive technological level. So here the point is to move this opinion mining to multipolar mining, which is not just simple sentiment, yes or no, good or bad. So opinion mining needs to progress a lot. So this is one bit. Second topic is information dynamics. Before I show these interdependencies and diffusion of news, or diffusion information across news and blogs. So this certainly is worth studying. It's hard to get data, but nowadays this seems to be possible. So information dynamics is certainly something which one should invest. Not just dynamics itself, but also predicting what may happen in the future in terms of events, trends, and so on. Complex event detection would fall under this topic. Okay, this is topic number 2. Topic number 3 is multimodal data processing. So in this linguistic community we talk about language mostly. But language, okay, lives in some kind of context. And this context is usually social context. So the most natural thing is obviously nowadays when we have Twitter, Facebook, many other services, joining textual data with social networking data, plus location, plus temporal information. So this would give us way better understanding of language itself, of content, and also on actually what's going on, what people talk about. Given the fact that nowadays Twitter language and this quick communication actually is not language anymore, it's more like SMS style. And the other bit is also what joining textual information with sensor networks and other unstructured sources like video, images, and so on. And this appears extremely valuable in the context of smart cities. Well, smart cities is again one big topic which is coming up. Maybe it's not extremely relevant at this stage for this community, but somehow this community certainly can contribute a lot into smart cities. Yeah? Next topic, number 4, is visualization interaction. So doesn't really matter, you know, we can calculate extremely smart things and come up with some crazy numbers, but if we cannot show this and communicate this to the user, it doesn't have much of a value. So visualization of text, textual dynamics, and social dynamics, this is of extreme importance, and research on that side is somehow lagging behind, heavily lagging behind. And this should be extended also to this adaptive user interface is suited for certain purposes. And the last one, so it's algorithmic fundamentals, so often we forget that all this is at the end still computer science, and especially now when we talk about big data, we need to be careful about what kind of things we do so that we can reach the scale which is offered to us through the data streams. So this includes, well, scale of the data as well as real-time aspects of the speed of the data processing. Okay, so these are these 5 points which we came up with as recommendations. There's way more written in the document, and of course many more things could be said about each of them. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.